Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the podcast that shows you how to convert 8 out of 10 sales conversations without acting like a douchebag. I'm your host, innovative sales coach, Aleasha Bahr, the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method, because if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there's no selling involved. If you're a service provider selling your own service who's ready to sell differently than the mainstream status quo and win more sales without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else, then this is for you. If you want to know more about the Black Sheep Sales Method, go to aleashabar.com. So, this episode is, like many of my solo episodes, inspired by a current client who struggles with overeducating in her sales conversations. She's actually a salesperson on the team of one of the clients that I work with, and they offer lead gen to med spas. So, it's really tough. Obviously, we've had conversations about doing more pre-call education, and you should go back to one of those episodes to find out more about that. Sometimes you're still going to have to give your prospects some context depending on how unfamiliar they are with your industry. So that's definitely the case with this client, and you want to avoid educating them. So they're just going to tune out if you do. And to begin, the salesperson's calls were like going 90 minutes, which is way too long because she was over educating so much. So, for example, a med spa doesn't know very much about marketing. They know a whole lot about skincare. They, a lot of times, are just guessing at it and are not getting new clients. It's extremely frustrating. They end up spending a lot of money, getting burned, super skeptical, all the things like, join the club. It's like a rite of passage, right? The issue is that sometimes we can't have a conversation with them about our service and how it's different because they don't have a basic marketing knowledge. So, for example, the other day, my client salesperson was talking to someone who was doing billboards for new client acquisition. And anybody who's had anything to do with marketing understands that billboards are a branding play at best. They are not going to get a direct response, right? She also gets people who are sometimes just posting on their social media and think that that will be the same as paid ads. So she was finding herself explaining, listen, that's branding, and branding does this, that, and the other. And when you post on your organic, you can't select who it shows up in front of. So those might not be your clients, and it's really limited. And all of this stuff that was just making the person glaze over, you know? We tried to compare it to when you go into a med spa and they tell you all about how the Restylane interacts with your blah 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 cells, and you're just like, I have no idea what you're saying, but you sound like an expert. It's the same thing, right? And that applies to whatever industry or service you sell as well. So instead of explaining what branding is and what organic is and how that's different from paid and what word of mouth is and how that's different from paid and all these things, you can ask a question that will allow them to understand so much better than you going on a really long tangent or lecture. So, for example, when the client explains that they have done a bunch of billboards and magazines, you can say, okay, what made you go with something that was more branding related versus direct response related? Because honestly, we want to know, like, was another med spa doing it? Did somebody tell you should do it? Did that other med spa that was doing it already have a really big reputation and client base? We can start having a conversation about all these little things once we understand why they made that choice. And just by asking the question, the client realizes there's a difference versus you having to explain it all. Then, when somebody's talking about followers and how many followers am I going to get from this, instead of my salesperson going on a really long tangent about how followers don't actually mean anything or likes or comments, she can simply say, are you looking for followers or new clients? And I mean, luckily, paid advertising does both, but that question is going to click for the prospect way more than just sitting there and explaining it all, right? In a 5 to 10-minute lecture where the other person's dazing out because this is the first time they're hearing this information and it's not their expertise, right? So also, had a call recently where the person was spending less with another agency, but they were positioning her as the discount option, this med spa. So we were able to ask, well, do you want to be the cheapest, or are you looking for more of that luxury positioning in the market? And if you pay attention, these questions also, in addition to avoiding over educating a prospect and naturally selling them a bit, they also are really positioning the whole conversation of, are you this person or that person? So you can let them know if they're a fit or not. If they want to be the cheapest, that's okay. We're not a fit. You should stick with your other agency, right? We're more about positioning people in a luxury way. And if somebody's looking for followers instead of new clients, that's okay. That's not something that we focus on, right? So when you're able to redirect at any point in this conversation towards, is this a fit or is this not a fit? It makes it a much easier conversation. That's what I mean by the bounding philosophy that if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there's no selling involved, because you're either wanting this or you're wanting that, and we're this, not that, and there's no judgment either way. It also is allowing you to have insights actually click for your prospect that are not going to happen if you just explain and educate. So I hope that this makes sense for you guys. And you might be thinking of things, I would if I were you, thinking of things that you're constantly educating your clients on, and how you could instead ask a question that sort of directs them into whether they're a fit or not, based on what you provide or your position or your differentiators. And of course, if that's something that you're not sure how to do, then book a sales level up call, which is in the show notes. I hope that this made a difference and got your wheels turning. It'll definitely save you a lot of time in the conversations. My client salesperson's now under 60 minutes instead of 90 minutes, and more people are signing up. So I hope that you can implement this and see the same in your business. And if you learned something from this episode, could you please subscribe, like, and share it? And either way, until next time, and thank you for listening.